Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I am going to load the attendance in the chat. If you wouldn't mind filling that out, that would be wonderful. And we're about to get started. Okay. Welcome to the initial options preview for the opening of Crown High School and the expansion of Damascus High School boundary study. The QR code located in the top right corner is going to take you to the boundary study webpage so that you can access the initial options, accompanying resources, interactive map tool, and survey. And I'm going to turn things over to Chief Mamoon to get us started. Good morning.
Good morning. Wanted to welcome everybody to the presentation about the initial options for the opening of the Crown High School boundary study this morning. I want to thank everybody for joining us. During this presentation, we are going to present the initial options for the boundary study, and we will share with you the resources, and we'll show the maps as well as go over some of the data. And then we will also explain where these resources are available so everybody is able to access this information in their own time and obviously understand these options and the impacts. So wanted to mention two things before I turn back the presentation over to the team is as you see that these are called initial options, and we have talked about this in our previous meetings in April, that this boundary study is an iterative process, and these are the initial options that we're presenting now. We want everybody to understand them, and we want everybody to kind of look through them, and then we will share with you one of the most important parts of this whole process is the survey. We definitely need everybody to be able to, review the options and then give us their feedback about the different options, what you do like and what you do not like about each one of these options. Because this is an iterative process, having that feedback allows us to refine these options, and we'll go over the timeline for the refinement. However, we want that feedback so we could refine the options and come back to the community in September to present the refined options. So we will, go through the presentation today and explain so that everybody's able to, understand the info as well as fill out the survey, because that's the important part. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Molchodi.
Why, thank you. Okay, so what you can see here is the agenda for our meeting for today. These sessions will be recorded and posted to the MCPS Boundary Study webpage. We will be also hosting optional virtual office hours beginning this week for additional support through this initial options phase. This can include technical support for accessing resources, clarifying questions, and any additional support needed to provide feedback on the initial options presented. Additional information, including the Zoom link, will be available on the webpage. And we'll show you that at the end, and I will actually do a second reminder at the end of the presentation about that, just to make sure everyone has that information. Okay, this is the current boundary study for the opening of Crown High School and expansion of Damascus High School. It is necessary to populate the new high school and help relieve overcrowding at the high schools in the study area. At the middle school level, it's necessary to identify feeder middle schools to the new high school and to better balance utilization at the middle school level. The elementary school assignments will not change as a result of this boundary study. However, the articulation patterns for the middle schools and high schools could change as a result. While the elementary school assignment will remain the same, the assigned middle school and/or high school could change for those included in the boundary study scope. As you can see, we are in the initial options phase in the boundary study process. The initial options are being presented, and you will have the opportunity to provide feedback on these initial options via the survey. During the months of July and August, the feedback collected will be synthesized in order to support the refinement of the options. Community input is sought in this first round to understand how the initial boundary options may impact students and families. This will help shape and refine the boundary options that will be brought to the community in the fall for another round of feedback. These refined options will be shared via the refined options phase in September. During this time, we will have refined options public information sessions to share the refined options, and you will have the opportunity to provide feedback on those refined options. During the months of October and November, the feedback collected will be synthesized in order to support the option development process for the superintendent's recommendation to the board. We will share more information about this process in September during the refined options phase, and the superintendent will present the recommendation, and the board will hold public hearings and solicit written testimony from the community. The boundary study process is guided by Board Policy FAA, Educational Facilities Planning. The 4 factors outlined in Board Policy FAA will be considered when recommendations for boundary options are developed. These 4 factors are demographic characteristics of student populations, geography, stability of student school assignment over time, and facility utilization. There is no weighting or priority for the 4 factors when determining the boundary options. When developing recommendations for the board, the superintendent of schools will provide a rationale for each recommendation that demonstrates the extent to which any recommendation advances each of the 4 factors. While each factor is considered, it may not be feasible to reconcile each and every recommendation with each and every factor. Throughout this process, community input is sought in accordance with Board Policy ABA Community Engagement. For each initial option, we will preview the following information: facility utilization at the high school level, high school and middle school overview maps, articulation and additional highlights, including the extent to which each option advances one or more of the Board Policy FAA factors. The superintendent of schools supports that the new boundaries be implemented beginning with grades 9 and 10 in the 27-28 school year, and that rising grade 11 and 12th grade students remain at their current high school of attendance. The implementation would continue with grades 9 through 11 in the 28-29 school year, followed by full implementation of grades 9 through 12 in the 29-30 school year. In addition, the superintendent supports that the new boundaries be implemented beginning with grades 6 and 7 for the 27-28 school year, while the rising 8th grade stays at their currently assigned school, followed by a full implementation of grades 6 through 8 in the 28-29 school year. Ultimately, the Board of Education has final approval for these decisions. While we don't have time to go into greater detail for each option presented, our initial options webpage has additional data tables, articulation charts, and maps that allow you to explore each option in greater detail. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kate, who is going to get us started with the options. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Kat. This is Kate Doran at Flow Analytics. We've been working with MCPS on the boundaries this spring. This first map, before we get into the options, shows several elementary schools within the Crown High School boundary study area, so very close to where the Crown High School location is in the middle. Please note that some of these school zones include non-contiguous areas or islands. These island areas exist in the boundaries for Rachel Carson, Diamond, Fallsmead, Jones Lane, Ritchie Park, Rosemont, Summit Hall, and Thurgood Marshall and Stone Mill Elementary School in this area. As a result, you may notice island assignments in some of the middle or high school options maps being presented. These are designed to align with the existing elementary school boundaries. As noted at the beginning of this presentation, elementary school boundaries are not changing as part of this study. Here is the high school overview map for option 1. You can see the new boundary lines for the opening of Crown High School and the expansion of Damascus High School, as well as the boundary lines for the other high schools included in this boundary scope. Crown is outlined in a black line on the map. On the initial options webpage, you can find additional maps, including a large-scale version of this map with the elementary school locations and boundary lines, as well as those established walk zones for option 1. With these options, we strive to keep students residing in walk zones as walkers as much as possible and try not to reassign them to middle and high schools outside of their designated walk zones. The walk zones developed for the middle and high schools identified in the boundary options will be developed in coordination with the MCPS Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation analyzes safety and walkability conditions to recommend appropriate walking zones and routes to schools in alignment with Board Policy EEA, student transportation. This is the facility utilization table for the high schools included in the boundary study scope for the opening of Crown High School and the expansion of Damascus High School. We will walk through this table. So on the left, the capacity, enrollment, and facility utilization data is shown for the current enrollment, including transfers, and the capacity of the schools without portable classrooms. The middle columns show the enrollment and facility utilization data for resident students who live within the current boundaries, and the resulting enrollment and facility utilization data for the resident students in the school year 2030-31 for option 1 is on the right. So that data is out to the school year 2030-31. Please note that the historical transfer rate data with consortia structures and programs was not considered in this initial options round, but program placeholder seats are being held at Seneca Valley High School for programs that are not as easily replicable, such as the automotive program. In option 1, the facility utilization will be under 100% for all high schools in the boundary study scope, with the exception of Seneca Valley High School, which will be at 109.6%. Please note that the facility utilization for Poolesville High School would fall under 80%. The initial options webpage also has the facility utilization data by middle school for option 1. So this same table, but with a list of middle schools and their data. The following data is also included in the initial options webpage for middle and high schools for both current students and as a result of option 1. Demographic data by race and ethnicity as defined by MCPS at a glance and self-reported by families. The percent of students who receive free and reduced meal services, you'll see written as farms in those tables, and the percent of students who are identified as emergent multilingual learners, you'll see written as EML, which was previously known as ESOL or ELL. Here is the middle school overview map for option 1. You can see the new boundary lines for the opening of Crown High School and the expansion of Damascus High School. For Crown is outlined in the darker black line over the middle school map, as well as the boundary lines for the middle schools included in the boundary study scope. On the initial options webpage, you can find additional maps, the interactive map, and a large-scale version of this map with the elementary school locations and boundary lines overlaid on it, as well as the established walk zones for option 1. Here is some additional information about the articulation patterns and facility utilization for option 1. Option 1 brings contiguous middle school boundaries for those in this boundary study scope. Split articulation from elementary to middle school is minimized in this option, changing from 11 current elementary schools with split articulation to middle schools to only 2 elementary schools with split articulation in option 1. Option 1 brings all of the high schools under 100% facility utilization, with the exception of Seneca Valley High School at 109.6. The initial options webpage also provides the current articulation patterns or feeder patterns for all schools in the boundary study scope from elementary to middle to high school, as well as the articulation patterns for each initial option. As a reminder, while the elementary school assignments will not change, the articulation patterns to those middle and high schools included in the boundary study scope can change. Split articulation exists and is necessary because middle schools are not sized to perfectly feed into high schools, nor are elementary schools sized to perfectly feed into middle schools. So we'll show this map at the top of each option because the geography around Crown High School has lots of elementary school zones, including non-contiguous areas or islands. So these island areas, again, exist for the boundaries of Rachel Carson, Diamond, Fallsmead, Jones Lane, Ritchie Park, Rosemont, Summit Hall, Thurgood Marshall, and Stone Mill Elementary School in this general Crown High School area. As a result, you may notice island assignments in some of the middle or high school options being presented because some of them are designed to align with existing elementary school boundaries. As noted at the beginning of the presentation, the elementary boundaries are not changing as part of this study. Here is the high school overview map for option 2. You can see the new boundary lines for reopening Crown High School outlined in black, as well as the boundary lines for the other high schools included in this boundary study scope. On the initial options webpage, you can find additional maps for option 2, the interactive map, and a large-scale version of this high school map with the elementary school locations and boundary lines, as well as the established walk zones for option 2. With these options, we strive to keep students residing in walk zones as walkers as much as possible and try not to reassign them to middle and high schools outside of their designated walk zones. This is the facility utilization table for the high schools included in the boundary study scope for the opening of Crown High School and expansion of Damascus High School. On the left, the capacity, enrollment, and facility utilization data is shown for current enrollment, including transfers and the capacity of those schools without portable classrooms. The middle columns show, the enrollment and facility utilization data for resident students who live within the current boundaries, and the resulting enrollment and facility utilization for the resident students that live within the option 2 boundaries for the school year 2030-31. Please note that the historical transfer rate data with consortia structures and programs was not considered in this initial options round, but program placeholder seats are being held at Seneca Valley High School for programs that are not as easily replicable, such as the automotive program. In option 2, the facility utilization will be between 80 to 100% for all high schools in the boundary study scope. The initial options webpage also has the facility utilization data by middle school for option 2. And please note that in option 2, the facility utilization will also be between 80 to 100% for all middle schools in the boundary study scope in this option. So for both high school and middle schools. The following data is also included in the initial options webpage for the middle and high schools, both current students and as a result of option 2 school boundaries. The demographic data by race and ethnicity as defined in MCPS at a glance and self-reported by families. Percent of students who receive free and reduced meal services, which you'll see written as FARMs, and percent of students who are identified as emergent multilingual learners, which you'll see written as EML, and was previously known as ESOL or ELL. Here is the middle school overview map for option 2. You can see new boundary lines for the opening of Crown High School and the expansion of Damascus High School, as well as the boundary lines for the middle schools included in this boundary scope. On the initial options webpage, you can find additional maps, the interactive map, and a large-scale version of this map with the elementary school locations and boundary lines, as well as the established walk zones for option 2. Here is some additional information about the articulation patterns and facility utilization for option 2. So option 2 brings all middle schools and high schools into the preferred range of 80 to 100% facility utilization. Compared to the current articulation patterns, more elementary schools would have split articulation to their assigned middle schools. And all of the high schools in the boundary study scope would have contiguous boundaries in option 2. The initial options webpage provides the current articulation pattern for all schools in the boundary study scope from elementary to middle to high school. So you can compare it to the articulation patterns to each initial option. And as a reminder, while elementary school assignments will not change, articulation patterns to those middle and high schools included in the boundary study scope can change. All right, here is this map again for reference for the elementary school boundaries near Crown High School, and you will see this playing out in the option 3 boundaries. This map shows several elementary schools within that Crown High School area. So note that some of these school zones include non-contiguous areas or islands. So these island areas exist in several boundaries in the Crown area, including Rachel Carson, Diamond, Fallsmead, Jones Lane, Ritchie Park, Rosemont, Summit Hall, Thurgood Marshall, and Stone Mill Elementary School. So as a result, you may notice some of these island assignments in some of the middle school or high school options being presented, because they are designed to align with the existing elementary school boundaries in those options. As noted at the beginning of this presentation, these elementary school boundaries, any of the elementary school boundaries, are not changing as part of this study. Here is the high school overview map for option 3. You can see the new boundary line for the opening of Crown High School outlined in black, and can maybe start to see those elementary islands playing out in this option 3, as well as for the study area, including the expansion of Damascus High School and the boundary lines for all of the other high schools included in this scope. On the initial options webpage, you can find additional maps of option 3, the interactive map that includes all options, and a large-scale version of this map with the elementary school locations and boundary lines overlaid on the map for comparison, as well as the established walk zones for option 3. With these options, we strive to keep students residing in walk zones as walkers as much as possible and try not to reassign them to middle and high schools outside of their designated walk zones. This is the facility utilization table for the high schools included in the boundary study scope for the opening of Crown High School and expansion of Damascus High School. The capacity, enrollment, and facility utilization data is shown on the left. So this data is the same in every table because it is showing the current 24-25 school year enrollment with transfers. And then the middle columns show the enrollment and facility utilization for resident students within the current boundaries. This is the same in every table as well. And then on the right side, you can see the resident students in the option 3 boundaries in the school year 2030-31 for option 3 on the right. Please note that the historical transfer rate data with consortia structures and programs was not considered in this initial options round. Program placeholder seats are being held at Seneca Valley High School for programs that are not as easily replicable, such as the automotive program in this option. In option 3, the facility utilization would be under 100% for all high schools in the boundary study scope, with the exception of Clarksburg High School at 101.9% and Gaithersburg High School at 106.3%. Please note that the facility utilization for Poolesville High School would fall under 80%, and Crown High School will open at 78.5% facility utilization. The initial options webpage also has the facility utilization data by middle school for option 3. The following data is also included in the initial options webpage for middle and high schools for both current and as a result of option 3. Demographic data by race and ethnicity as defined in MCPS at a glance, and which is self-reported by families. The percent of students who receive free and reduced meal services or farms, and the percent of students who are identified as emergent multilingual learners or EML, previously known as ESOL or ELL. All of that data is also on the initial options webpage. Here is the middle school map for option 3. You can see the new boundary line for option 3 for Crown High School outlined in black for the study area that includes the opening of Crown High School and the expansion of Damascus High School, as well as the boundary lines for the middle schools included in this boundary study scope. On the initial options webpage, you can find additional maps, including a large-scale version of this map, with the elementary school locations and boundary lines overlaid on the middle school boundaries for option 3, as well as the established walk zones. Option 3 brings most of the high schools under 100% facility utilization, with only Clarksburg High School and Gaithersburg High School slightly over 100% at 101.9 and 106.3% respectively. Facility utilization at Poolesville High School and Crown High School would fall under 80% in option 3. Compared to the current articulation patterns, more middle schools would have split articulation to their assigned high schools. If the option 3 boundaries were implemented in the current school year, there would be less disparity of students receiving farms and EML services at the high schools within the study area. Oh, and sorry, the initial options webpage provides current articulation patterns for all schools in the boundary study scope, that is elementary to middle to high school. So for the current schools in the study area, current boundaries, and the option 3 boundaries, so you can compare. And as a reminder, the elementary school assignments will not change, but those articulation patterns to middle and high schools included in the boundary scope can change and can be different between those options. So for reference, one last time, the elementary school boundaries that are near Crown High School, these are several elementary schools within that kind of Crown area that include non-contiguous areas or islands. So these island areas exist in the boundaries for Rachel Carson, Diamond, Fallsmead, Jones Lane, Ritchie Park, Rosemont, Summit Hall, Thurgood Marshall, and Stone Mill Elementary School. So as a result, you may notice island assignments in some of the middle or high school options maps being presented. In those options, those are designed to align with existing elementary school boundaries. And as noted at the beginning of the presentation, these elementary schools boundaries are not changing as part of this study. Here is the last map, the high school overview map for option 4. You can see new boundary lines for the opening of Crown High School and expansion of Damascus High School study area. So Crown is outlined in black, as well as the boundary lines for the other high schools included in this boundary study scope. On the initial options webpage, you can find additional maps, including a large-scale version of this map with the elementary school locations and boundary lines, as well as established walk zones for option 4. With these options, we strive to keep students residing in walk zones as walkers as much as possible and try not to reassign them to middle and high schools outside of their designated walk zones. This is the facility utilization table for the high schools included in the boundary study scope for the opening of Crown High School and expansion of Damascus High School. The capacity, enrollment, and facility utilization, again, is shown on the left. This is the same in every table for all of the options. It's showing current 24-25 school year enrollment at the high schools, the school capacity without portables, and that facility utilization. The middle columns show the resident students that live within the current boundaries in the 24-25 school year. And on the right side is the option 4 facility utilization for the option 4 boundaries for resident students in 2030-31, which is post-implementation, showing what that would look like. Please note that the historical transfer rate data with consortia structures and programs was not considered in this initial round, but those program placeholder seats are being held at Seneca Valley High School for programs that are not as easily replicable, such as the automotive program. In option 4, the facility utilization will be between 80 to 100% for all high schools in the boundary study scope, with the exception of Clarksburg High School, which is 100.5, Damascus High School at 104.1, and Seneca Valley High School at 102.7. The initial options webpage also has facility utilization data by middle school for option 4. Please note that in option 4, the facility utilization will also be below 100% for all middle schools in the boundary study scope. So the following data is also included in the initial options webpage for middle and high schools for current and as a result of option 4 to be able to compare. The demographic data by race and ethnicity as defined in MCPS at a glance and self-reported by families. The percent of students who receive free and reduced meal services or FARMs, and the percent of students who are identified as emergent multilingual learners or EML, previously known as ESOL or ELL. Here is the middle school overview map for option 4. You can see the new boundary lines for the opening of Crown High School and expansion of Damascus High School, as well as the boundary lines for the middle schools included in this boundary study scope. On the initial options webpage, you can find additional maps, the interactive map, and a large-scale version of this middle school map with the elementary school locations and boundary lines overlaid, as well as established walk zones for option 4. Here is some additional information about the articulation patterns and facility utilization for option 4. So compared to the current articulation patterns, more elementary schools would have split articulation to assigned middle schools, and more middle schools would have that split articulation to their assigned high schools. All of the middle schools in the boundary study scope would have facility utilization under 100% in option 4. But in option 4, all walk zones remain within the current school boundaries for both middle and high schools in the boundary study scope for option 4. The initial options webpage, again, provides those current articulation patterns for all schools in the boundary study scope. So that's elementary to middle to high school feeder patterns or articulation patterns. So we have those for current students and for each option. As a reminder, while the elementary school assignments, those boundaries will not change. Those articulation patterns to middle and high schools included in the boundary study scope can change.
Thank you so much, Kate. Okay, now we're going to switch to talk a little bit about the resources and share with you what is available and how you will be able to access the information that Kate mentioned, as well as the additional information. We have a boundary options webpage for the opening of Crown High School and expansion of Damascus High School boundary study. What I'm going to do is pause for a moment, and I am going to share the link in the page, in the chat, so everyone can see it. So this first link takes you to the MCPS webpage. This second link is going to take you straight to the Crown options page. I'm just going to pause for a second to make sure that everyone has those. This is our first session with it. So if there's anything that needs to be adjusted, just either let us know, or I'm sure we will figure it out and we will make all of those adjustments. Thank you for sharing anything that you've noticed. We definitely appreciate it. For each option, there will be a mini preview video that sort of allows you to just listen to and watch and or read the part of this presentation that Kate talked about with respect to each option. It will also allow you to utilize the interactive map, which we're going to model for you in a few minutes, and give you access to all of the data charts and maps that we have for each of these options. And I will also show those to you in a moment. The interactive map tool, which we're going to model in a moment, allows you to do two different things. It allows you to type in an address and sort of find out what the options for middle schools and high schools do with each option. And it also allows you to just click on an area and have the same thing happen. And so we're going to open the tool up and model it for you because we've seen a lot of questions related to the tool and we want to make sure that everyone knows how to access it. But that tool is included for each option and there's a lot of things you can do with it. So like I said, we're going to model that in a moment. For the interactive website that has all of these options, at the very bottom, underneath the 4 options, is the survey. And so one of the things that's very, very important is that you are reviewing the options, looking at all of the resources, and then giving feedback. And so for each option, there will be 2 questions. What do you like? What don't you like? And at the end of the survey, there's also an open-ended question that allows you to give general feedback. This survey will be open for approximately 6 weeks to allow stakeholders to really have time to review the options, the accompanying resources, and to provide that meaningful feedback via the survey. The survey is available in English, as well as Spanish, Amharic, French, Chinese, Portuguese, Vietnamese, and Korean. And as I said, it's located at the bottom of that page, and it will be open for approximately 6 weeks. Okay, and then just as a reminder, we would love for you to review the options and the accompanying resources, provide that feedback, and if you need to attend a virtual office hours session to get some support, these are the times and days that are listed. We will begin tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and the links are in the initial options webpage so that you can find them, and we look forward to helping you in that space. I'm going to stop sharing just for a second, and then I'm going to switch over to my other screen so that Kate and I can do a little modeling for you of the webpage and the interactive map tool. Okay, so now I'm going to share my other screen so that you can see kind of what's going on here. So we have this interactive map tool. It is actually embedded in the Boundary Study webpage. You click on the link right there and it will take you right to it. The office hours are listed at the top along with the Zoom link. And then right under that, you can see the link to all of the Crown resources. And so if you look at this Google site, you can see that you have the resources as well as the survey, and then another reminder about the virtual office hours. Once we complete all of the sessions, including the live ones on Tuesday and Wednesday, we will upload the slide deck and put it in a prominent location so that you have that. Before we do the interactive map, I just want to go through a few things. If you look in the data section, you can see the data tables that Kate referenced, middle school and high school, as well as the effects tables. And then if you keep scrolling down, you can see current articulation, as well as the articulation for each option. And just so everyone is aware, articulation is we also say the feeder patterns from elementary to middle and middle to high school. And then I can go back to the options and click in maps, and then you can have access to the maps that we have shared. And so there's quite a few maps in there. Some of them are large scale, and some of them are just smaller maps. What is important to note is that some of the larger scale ones will be full size at those in-person sessions. And we have what's called a map room where you'll be able to go into that space and see the larger versions of these and be able to use the interactive tool on a smartboard. And so anyone who is interested in coming to one of those sessions is able to come to the presentation again, which will be just like this one if they missed part of it. And they will also be able to go to the map room and really sort of explore those options and get their questions answered. And then again, the survey is right here. You will click on that in order to provide the feedback. But now Kate and I are going to go to the interactive map tool. And so when I go to the interactive map tool, it sort of gives me some directions and reminds me about the survey. And it defaults to showing me the current boundaries. And so if I want to sort of take some of those layers away, I can go over to the layer list and I can take away some of these areas that are shaded in. And if I wanted to, I could add in one for an option. And so the map tool allows you to do that. What we have found is that a lot of people like going and zooming in on a particular area and finding out what the options are for middle school and high school by area. And so I can zoom in to do that and just pick an area and say, okay, what would that look like? And then it would tell me the existing elementary, middle schools and high schools and elementary school. And then it would also tell me the assigned middle school and high school with each of those 4 options. So a lot of people have shared with us that they like that because they just want to be able to see what their middle school and high school assignments would be by option. What you can also do is you can actually type in an address. And you can find it on the map. And so the map will find this address for you. And then within that, you click near it and say, yes, please, I'd like to see the options for this particular address. And
Karen,
then
I'm not seeing your screen at the moment. Sorry.
oh no,
It looks like it was sharing and then it looks like it jumped off.
you know what? Let me refresh and try that again. Can you see it now?
Oh, it looks like folks can see the screen and I can't. So continue.
Oh,
Sorry,
I'm
Kat.
sorry. Okay, let me
Looks
go
like
back.
it looks like the public can see it and I cannot. So I won't be able to jump in and help you, but keep going.
That's okay.
Sorry.
You're good. I remember the address I chose. So, okay. So again, type in an address. It takes you to that address, so you don't have to kind of play around with the screen, but you do have to double click on it in order to see those options. And then again, it will show you current elementary, middle, and high school, and elementary, middle, and high school. Thank you. And then it will also show you the middle school and high school options by option, middle school and high school assignments by option, sorry. And so a lot of people have said that they prefer just to kind of go in and click on an area and do that. If you would like to, if you kind of get into this map and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to fix it, you can always press the refresh button and reload it. And then it will default to the original sort of map. And again, you can hide the legend and you can move around layers if you would like to. If you do not want to get into that much detail about sort of layering on the options, like you can see there, then you can just ignore that and go right to the map and click on an area. So I'm just going to click on one right here. And then what I can do is once I've chosen an area, I can again see the existing elementary, middle school, and high school, as well as the assigned middle schools and high schools by option for these initial options. And there's a lot of different ways in which you can use that feature. I'm going to stop sharing so I can actually turn my camera on for a moment. Hi. Okay, so just to wrap up, we will be sharing the, I'm going to do it one more time just to make sure everyone got it. So this is the boundary study webpage for MCPS. It has more information than you will possibly need related to both boundary studies that we're conducting right now. But the webpage for the Crown and Damascus boundary study with the initial options is right here. And so again, this is where you will be able to access the data, the maps, the interactive map tool, as well as the survey. And just as a reminder, we have those virtual office hours. You are more than welcome to attend. I will be there. We really look forward to being able to answering people's questions and helping them get what they need to respond in the survey. And again, if you are interested in coming to one of our in-person sessions at Northwest and Richard Montgomery on Tuesday and Wednesday night, we will have this presentation done in the auditorium twice, once at 6:30 and once at 7:30. And then we'll have that map room set up for you if you would like to just go right to that space and you can look at the maps, you can get your questions answered, you can provide feedback. We'll also have paper copies of the survey for people who prefer that, and any sort of clarifying things that we need to share at that time. And we just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to continuing this, and we will see you soon. So thank you.